Evening everyone, welcome back to my channel, True Crime with Jess Rose. Tonight I'd like to look at a show called Britain's Most Evil Killers, and the title of this is The Murder of Sarah Payne. Now it's a notorious case, you know, it is very, very well known, but it does go back to 2000, and I think a little bit like the James Bulger case, I was quite surprised at the amount of people that hadn't heard of this case. And I suppose when you think about it, because it does go back a bit, maybe, you know, it's not as known as it used to be, and I think that's a shame. I think it should be remembered. It was such an awful case, and although I'm not very keen on the shows that concentrate just on the killer, don't think they deserve that kind of airtime, really. This show does, but I think because it was such a big case and so notorious, people did want to know about this guy. And his name was Roy Whiting, and he was born in 1969 in Horsham, West Sussex. Now, a bit of a background on Roy. He was from a broken home. His parents split up in his teens. Roy was a bit of a loner. He was actually said by a friend, well, an acquaintance, that he was known as Billy No Mates. Didn't get on very well in school, and didn't really have much of a relationship with his parents. So he very much a lonely guy. But in 1986, he does get married, has a child, but it doesn't last long, and they get divorced. In 1990, Roy was living alone, and it stated that he started to get an unhealthy interest in little girls. I think it's got to have been before then, has to have been, because it said it's a preference. So that preference has got to have come into play earlier, but he's obviously suppressed it, tried to ignore those urges, and apparently he would have had a mental conflict trying to not give in to his deprived urges, you know, and he kept them at bay right up until 1995. And neighbours of his started to see him hanging around the primary schools. Hasn't got a kid there, hanging around at home time, and you know, it said he was fantasising about these children by that point. In 1995, he was 36, and he gave into this urge, and he took a young girl and he raped her in the woods. From what it says on the show, it was a brutal assault of a 9-year-old child. The police found his car, and forensics proved that it was Roy. He was arrested and charged, and he was sentenced, wait for it, to 4 years. 4 years, and part of this decision was based on a psychiatrist's point of view that he was no longer a threat to society. Well, he wasn't a threat to society. It was a one-off. He wasn't a paedophile. He didn't like children. It was just a one-off. He wouldn't do it again. It was an accident. He thought she was 90. In prison, though, another psychiatrist sees Roy Whiting and says the complete opposite. He says he had a very unhealthy interest in little girls. You know, that wasn't going to change. That was his preference. And even though this was known, he did 2.5 years. Didn't even do the 4 years. I wonder if she got over it in 2.5 years. I would think not. So in 1997, Roy was released. He was put on the sex offenders register, and he moved to Littlehampton. Littlehampton was a family town. He's on his own, but he's in this very family-orientated, close little town. And that brings us up to Saturday, July the 1st, 2000. Now, he'd managed to keep his nose clean, from what we know, for those 3 years. Maybe he'd been suppressing his urges again. I don't know. But on July 1st, 2000, Sarah and Michael Payne go to visit family, or go to visit the grandparents with their 4 children. And one of their 4 children was 8-year-old Sarah. And you see her photos, notorious, like James Borgia, like Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells. It was everywhere at the time, because she was just beautiful in a little school uniform. Such a beautiful little girl. And Sarah and, like I say, her 2 brothers and sister were playing in the fields behind their nan's house. And this was a family town. It was very safe. It was okay to let your kids go out and play. There was nothing wrong with that. It was afternoon. It was at the back of the nan's house. No one thought anything. No one thought anything of it. Lee, her brother, who was 13, comes rushing to the parents, Sarah and Michael, and says he can't find Sarah. Now, this was the afternoon. Like I say, no one was particularly overly worried, because, like I say, it was a very safe town. Someone thought maybe she might have got lost in the grass. So they're looking, in the fields and stuff. No one's particularly worried at first. But then it gets to 9 o'clock and the police are called. And there's a term used called the balloon goes up. And this would have been because she was 8. It was late at night. It was not heard of there. And also, the police would have been aware that Roy Whiting did live in that area. Registered sex offender. They knew what he'd done to a child of a very similar age. So they're very worried. And the next day, there's still no sighting. The police are notified. The public are notified by this point. Everyone's out looking. And what had happened is the 4 children had been playing, and Sarah fell over. She'd hurt her knee, and it said she kind of stomped off, as an 8-year-old would. I'm going back to nanny's kind of thing. And Lee, who looks like he was 13, he was the eldest, he was a bit worried, like, I can't leave her go on her own. And he chases after her through this field. He's not far behind her at all. He sees her cut through like a hedge that you would cut through onto the road to get to the nan's house. When he gets through the hedge, like I say, he's seconds behind her. She's not there. She's disappeared in those seconds. But what he does say, and he lets his parents and the police know, is a white van speeding off very quickly. So he gets to the other side of this hedge, no sister, but this van, just darting off down the road. So like I say, this picture of Sarah is released, and the public, they came out in droves to help look. The press from everywhere got involved. There was press from Japan, New Zealand, America. They were all there. It was still 2000, and although it wasn't unheard of, because it was such a lovely little town and it was kind of unheard of there, it was a shock to everybody. And plus she just could have been anybody's child. She just looked so innocent and sweet in a uniform. I think everyone felt for Sarah and the family. They all did. And although police had Roy Whiting as, chief suspect, they weren't sure. There was no evidence. So when they went to check him out, what do you know? Roy Whiting had recently bought a white van. But Roy claimed that he was at a fun fair in Hove on that Saturday for the whole day. That was his alibi. That's where he was. And when the police left after questioning Roy, they noticed that straight away he jumped into his white van. But as he closed the door, a receipt fell on the floor. So the policeman who was there, spotting this, runs over, grabs the receipt, and the receipt's not for Hove. It's not far from where Sarah was abducted. It was a receipt from a petrol station. At the time, around about she'd gone missing, they knew he was lying, but, a receipt, it's not enough to actually arrest him for, they weren't 100%. So he wasn't giving them anything at all. So on the 3rd of July, there's a press conference, and you see Sarah. You just see her, and it's heartbreaking because she's talking to Sarah. She's actually, she's talking to her child, basically saying, we're going to come and get you, it's so upsetting. It genuinely is upsetting to watch it. On the show you do see this press conference, and like Denise Bolger, you can just, it's an expression you never want. It's heartbreaking. You would have to, look at the show and see this press conference, because she did have to do a few of them. And each time she was speaking to Sarah, she never lost hope. She never lost hope about getting Sarah home. And I think that was, it's so heartbreaking, because in these cases, the police know they've got 24 to 48 hours of a chance of getting this, a child home alive. And Martin Underhill, who was the lead detective on the case, he said it was very upsetting for him, and very upsetting watching the press conferences. And he actually starts to get upset on the show. You see him, his voice starts to break, talking about Sarah's press conferences, and it is very upsetting. But 2 weeks go by. Police at this time, they know it, Roy. They know it, but they've got no evidence. They've got nothing on him. And Martin, like I say, the lead detective, he said he was having nightmares for that entire 2 weeks, because he knew what Roy had done to the first little girl, the little 9-year-old girl. They 100% believed harm had definitely come to Sarah through Roy. He was having nightmares. What if there's a third child? What if a third child goes missing? He knows what this guy is capable of. But 16 days later, just over the 2 weeks, on the 17th of July 2000, a farmer finds Sarah half a mile away in a shallow grave in some farmland, and he comes across her. And like I say, it was a very shallow grave. She was just, it broke the country's heart. No one wanted that to happen. The whole country was devastated, and all the people on the show who were interviewed, you see the feelings of just utter devastation, remembering that day when Sarah was found. They still haven't got any forensic evidence on Roy. They still haven't. There's nothing on Sarah. There's nothing on Sarah to link Roy or, anyone, anything. There's nothing on her. But a woman comes forward, because they do another press release. They announce that Sarah's been found. And like I say, a woman phones up and she says, I should have said it before, but she does come forward and she says she's seen a child's shoe on the road between, funny enough, the petrol station that we know Roy was at, between Sarah's nan's house and this petrol station. There was a child's shoe, and the police go and they find this child's shoe, and Martin says again it was utterly, the family knew what had happened to Sarah, but to take this shoe to them and say, is this Sarah's? It was like another devastating blow. You know, he found it very hard to do it, and obviously it must have been so upsetting for them. But it was Sarah's shoe, and it was the Velcro strap, which he says in evidence is a gift, because Velcro picks up everything. It picks up everything. And now they had, you know, something to go on, so they send it to forensics, and they find, I don't know if it's one of Roy's hairs, but they find something on the shoe. He had evidence on the shoe, but Roy had moved, and he'd moved in with his dad, not far away, but vigilantes, like I say, by this point, everyone knew it was Roy. There was just nothing to link him. So the police couldn't arrest him, but just everyone knew it was him. And vigilantes had gone round to his dad's and they basically destroyed his dad's house. So he takes the, you know, weird decision of going camping. He camps out, maybe to save his dad. I'm not sure, but he goes in a camp somewhere, and then he steals the car. It's like he's panicked. It's like he doesn't know what to do now. He knows time's running out. He knows the closing in on him, and he steals the car. And there becomes a big police chase. You know, it's quite a big thing. And the police, they get him because it was a high speed chase. He crashes. Police obviously arrest him. He's charged with theft and, you know, dangerous driving, and I think they try and throw the book at him for that because they want to keep him in. They want to get him off the streets. And so they're actually relieved. They're relieved. They've been kind of thrown a bone, really, you know, which would give them a chance of trying to sort this evidence out. So they've got the receipt. They've now got the shoe. It's still not enough to charge him, though. So they re-examine the van, and the white van, and they find one of Sarah's hairs in the van and like a red sweatshirt, and that's it. That's all they need. They just needed that time. And yeah, Roy Wallace was charged with abduction and murder on February the 6th, 2001. And Martin, the lead detective, said he cried. He physically cried. He was that close to the family, and he felt 100% part of this, you know, that he needed to solve this case for them. He said, you know, Sarah and Michael, they were just so dignified. They kept that hope for all that time, and even when they found out, they were still very dignified. And he said he did. He cried, you know, with relief and everything else. And Roy, who by this point was 42, pleading not guilty. He's still swearing, even with all the evidence starting to pile up. He didn't do it. It wasn't me. Even with his history, I didn't do it. So in November 2001, the trial begins. Alongside, they've got the receipt, they've got the shoe, they've got the red sweatshirt with her hair. You know, they've got evidence. But the judge decides that the jury shouldn't know about Roy's previous conviction. So I do understand, to make a trial fair, that the jury would only, I suppose, look at the evidence from now. So I get why the judge has done it. It is just frustrating from our point of view because we know what he's capable of. But I suppose to make it fair, the jury needs to go in blank, not knowing anything about this guy, so that he can get a fair trial. And so it can't be, in a few months down the line on appeal, be a mistrial and the guy walks. So I do understand it. On Wednesday, December the 12th, 2001, luckily, the jury did find him guilty. And it was said that Sarah was so strong through the trial. Someone did shout "rot in hell" at the end. you know, when he was found guilty. But apart from that, which I think we can all agree is perfectly understandable, you know, they were very dignified. They held themselves so well. You know, she just sounds like such... You've got to admire her. You have to. You know, what she knew as well. So when he's sentenced, it comes out then, his previous conviction, and no one can believe that this guy was released back into society after what he'd done. You know, and the impact of that is still, to this day, it's still shocking. It's what he'd done to the 9-year-old was so brutal. She didn't die, he didn't kill her, but it was so brutal. And plus showing his preference to young children. How was he allowed to come out again? You know, and a few years later, do the, you know, it's scary. And Sarah, she didn't just go into a corner and, you know, just let the world go by. You know, she didn't do that. She knew she had to do something. She knew she had to do something to keep children safe. And she, you know, she didn't stop. She kept pushing for a law to come into place, and the law that everyone might be aware of, but might not know how it's come about. It's called Saras Law, and it was based on the American law that come in called Megan's Law, and it's basically so parents or anyone, you can know when a sex offender's in the area. You know, it's Sarah's Law to make us all aware that, you know, they're out there and you can find if there's any in the area. And that law was passed by Sarah, and it's actually called Sarah's Law, and she passed that legislation. And it's just such a testament to this lady that she did that, and she found the strength to do that, just to get up in the morning. But I suppose she did have 3 other children, and it was so sad, and she did fight through that way. But it was such a shame that Sarah and Michael couldn't get through it. You know, they did split, and Michael eventually did die. He couldn't cope. He couldn't cope. Michael couldn't. Sarah actually had a stroke. Still remained very dignified. You know, it took its toll on this family. It really did. And to know that she still found the strength, even based on everything that had happened, that make us want to crawl into a hole. You know, she didn't, and she'd done something for her daughter in her daughter's name, and it's something that we all take for granted now, but she pushed for that, and it's a testament to her. And it kind of changed everyone's outlook on letting your kids play out now. In 1993, with the James Bulger story, obviously, it did start to make you watch your kids closer. But in 2000, kids still could go out and play. You still had kids playing outside, kicking a ball in the summer, and, you know, coming in when it was getting dark. You know, that was still kind of a thing, but it's changed people's outlook. And then, you know, then when Soham case come about with the, you know, Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells, I think that was the end of it. I mean, you don't see kids playing out really anymore. I don't know about in small towns and villages, but certainly not on city streets really. It's not something you see a lot. You know, you get gangs hanging about, obviously different subject, but not children playing out as they used to. It's not a thing anymore. And Roy Whiting is one of the people we can thank for that. Now, Roy, so I've got a smile on my face, has been viciously attacked in prison twice since sentencing. So, you know, that's silver line on that side. But he will be eligible for parole, but not until 2041, which will make Roy 82. Now, I do, like, although it says he's eligible for parole, I'm thinking he's not getting out. I think he'll be very much like, the case with Georgia Williams and Jamie Reynolds. I think this will be a full life term from what I can gather. And so it should, and this case should not be forgotten, not only because of how terrible it was, and I'll tell you what as well, what I did forget, he's never said what happened. Sarah, I think that was what happened with Michael as well. They never got closure. He never gave them what he did. He never said what happened. The most they've said on the show is that, she would have come out of that hedge and just been bundled into the back of that van. It was called a blitz abduction. Because obviously he wouldn't have known she was going to be there at that moment in time. It was a split-second decision on his part. And it's just awful. It's just absolutely awful. And I don't think that should ever be forgotten. I don't. And the work that Sarah put in afterwards, getting Saras Law passed, and so it is a hard one. It's a hard one talking about children, but I do think they all should be remembered. They all should be. It shouldn't be forgotten, no matter how much time passes. And that was my story of Sarah Payne, which was it was such an awful case, and it is very, very sad that he's never given them closure. Obviously not Michael now, but Sarah, she's never had closure, and that's what I said. Him getting a hiding in prison. There'll be no tears from anybody. I wouldn't have thought for that. Thank you for joining me again. I really do appreciate it. I really do. I hope you can join me again soon. If you've got any comments, pop them in the box. If you'd like to subscribe, again, I really appreciate it. And thank you again. I'll see you next time. Thank you.